Bruce Flohr, thanks for joining us today.
You.
Tell us about RCA Records, what you do here, and what exactly does A&R mean, which you're in charge of?
A&R is pretty much an outdated term these days. It stands for artist and repertoire, and it goes back to the old days of rock and roll when an A&R guy was in charge of finding the artist, the Elvis Presley or the Bruce Springsteen or the Aretha Franklin, and then finding the musicians to put around that person and the songs to sing. So they were star makers, they were creators of the whole entity. And now A&R, although we still use the term, our roles as talent scouts, as you'd say, is much more of, I believe, facilitating people's dreams and visions. Is, at least from my perspective, the artists I'm looking for already have the talent to write their own songs, to sing their own songs, and to play their own instruments. All I want to do is give them the tools to make their dreams come true, because ultimately their dreams are my dreams, and I kind of live vicariously through all my artists. Because as we all know, everybody wanted to be a baseball player or a football player or a rock star. I too wanted to be a rock star. When I realized I didn't have enough hair to do so, I thought I better be in the music business.
Can you give us a bit of history of RCA over the years? What kind of artists have you had in the past?
Well, RCA is the oldest record company in America. We're almost approaching our 100th-year anniversary. And, we have the little nipper dog and staring into the gramophone. And it goes way back to the classical records, but also, most recently, our rock and roll history starts with Elvis Presley. And he is the biggest selling artist in the history of music. I think it's something like 150 million records the guy sold. 57 gold or platinum albums. It's phenomenal. But what RCA has tried to do over the last 10 years, but more importantly over the last 5 years, is basically shed the Elvis Presley baggage, so to speak. Not because Elvis Presley is something we're ashamed of, but that's all we were known for. Now it's time to create the new Elvis Presleys and move forward into the future of what music's all about. And we've been able to do that recently with some major successes in the States, at least, with an artist by the name of the Dave Matthews Band, which here in the States has sold over 3 records, almost 12 million albums. We have a lot of contemporary new rock bands that used to never want to be on RCA because we were kind of perceived as the stodgy old label. And they have put people like myself and other A&R guys back in New York and Los Angeles in charge of going out there and finding the next generation of rock music.
Do you ever feel like you have a sense of history being at the label that Elvis was once at?
For me personally, I was never a fan. I like to think I'm still a little too young to appreciate Elvis. I barely remember the bad days, My history starts with Van Halen. And so I never looked at RCA as an institution, but I certainly feel like I certainly respect the fact that here's a label that has been in one of the most difficult industries in America through all the transitions, and it's still there, as opposed to a lot of these new labels that are there because they have a lot of funding and they're around for 2 years and then they get sold or they fall apart or they go bankrupt. RCA comes to work every day and goes home every day and moves the boat forward a little bit at a time.
How many A&R people like yourself are in the company?
There's myself and a gentleman by the name of Ron Fair here on the West Coast. It's just the two of us. And then there is Brian Malou, Dave Novick, David Bendeth, Pete Robinson, and Franz Flashley in New York. I think I counted 9, maybe 7.
So just a few of you.
Yeah, and we all are basically on the same team. We look for different things. Each one has their own specialized sense of music. Some guys are more in the pop vein, singer-songwriters, dance acts, things like Wild Orchid or Robin. Some are more into the acoustic vein of music, and some are more into the harder-edged rock stuff. I'm kind of fall in the gray area of anywhere between acoustic-based music, like an artist that I have named Jeremy Toback, to a hard rock band that's kind of like our version of the Smashing Pumpkins, a band called The Hum. So I run the gamut. If somebody said, what kind of A&R person are you? I'm looking for groups or individual artists that are going to make great albums. I think that the industry has gotten to a point where we are very quick to sign groups that have one or two good songs, but when you put on the whole record, you kind of skip through most of the songs because there's not that much depth there. I'm looking for artists that when you pay $15 in American dollars, you're getting a great album and you want to listen to the whole thing and experience the whole record. Groups the way REM made records, the way U2 makes records, the way The Cure makes records, where you didn't worry about it had a smash. You just believed in the whole project because you believed in the artist.
So Bruce, where's your desk and chair? It doesn't look like an office here.
My desk and chair are adios.
So this is actually your office right here.
This is where I work. Yeah,
Wow.
I usually sit right here, phone on the coffee table, and I try to make it as comfortable as possible. And not until 6 o'clock do I bring out the beverages.
What does this atmosphere do? How does this help you in working in this field?
For me, since I'm dealing with music, it's a very creative, obviously, field, and I just didn't want to I can't get stuck behind a desk acting like I'm pushing pencils and selling widgets. I'm dealing with people's lives here, and I'm dealing with people's emotions when it comes to music. Music, that's the pulse. It makes you feel something: happy, angry, sad, in love, out of love. And for me, this environment allows me to realize that music is part of our everyday lives. You listen to it at home, you listen to it in your car, and I just don't want to feel like I work for a stock, broker.
What is a typical day for you like in your job?
Well, the average day, since I'm based in Los Angeles and our headquarters in New York, the average day is me being awoken by a phone call saying, Bruce, we need you on this conference call. So I get my butt out of bed and go down to my office at my house and pretty much talk to my New York office. They're all sitting around a conference room, and we start the day on talking about what records need marketing, what records are in the studio. And I kind of give them an update on what's going on out here. Then I head into the office. I have about a 30-minute drive into the office, most of which is either spent cranking music or on the phone, talking to basically New York. And then when I get here, there's a lot of, I see my job every day is to come in and say, okay, I have 5 acts that I deal with. What's going to go wrong with them today, and how do I stop it before it does? Because the industry as a whole, no matter what label you work for, is a machine that can spiral out of control unless you're really, putting in stopgaps of basically what is quality control. You've got artists that are out on the road. They have no idea what's going on with their record at a radio station, at a record store, in a magazine. So we have to kind of come in. I got to take a temperature on each record and make sure that the team, meaning the RCA employees, are all thinking the same thing. Because if you and I are working on the same act, you might hear it differently than I do. But ultimately, I'm not worried if you hear it the way I hear it. I'm worried if you hear it the way the artist hears it. Mm-hmm. So if you tell a magazine, hey, I got this great new artist and he's really good at this, and no problem, you could put him on the cover of your magazine dressed like an elephant. Because you're thinking, well, God, at least we got him on the cover of the magazine. And I'm sitting there saying, you stupid idiot. No, that's not what we're
No
doing.
elephants. Yeah.
No elephants.
No.
We'll do donkeys, but we don't do elephants. That's really my job.
Mm.
Then at night, probably 4 days out of the week, it varies. Sometimes it's 7, sometimes it's 2, depending on what's going on in the city. I hit the clubs. I go out around 8:30, and I can go to anything from 5 different shows in a night. And thank God there's valet parking because you can get in and get out quickly. And I go in, I see the band. 9 times out of 10, I know ahead of time that I'm not going to like the band. And that, a lot of people say, well, then why would you bother going? You never know. Mm-hmm. You never know from the tape whether or not the guy has got star quality, whether or not she's, though has a beautiful voice, if she's more amazing live. You just never know. And you have to be able to go catch 3 songs and say it's not for me.
Mm. What is payback for you? What makes you feel, real satisfaction from doing your work?
I think I can still remember, like it was yesterday, the moment it was, I can still remember like it was yesterday, and I forgot when it was. It was just about a year ago at Madison Square Garden. One of the artists that I signed, along with a partner of mine, Peter Robinson, this band, the Dave Matthews Band, 18,000 people sold out Madison Square Garden. And you would have thought that the guy was giving a private concert for us in our living room. The whole venue just shrunk down to size, and it was just like 18 of your closest friends partying to a band that I was this much responsible for, and that made it all worth it.
Growing up, what kind of bands did you listen to?
I had the worst taste. Out of all my friends, they give me a lot of crap for having really lame taste. I liked groups like the Babies, which had John Waite in it, right? I liked groups like the Eagles, which aren't lame, but most of my friends were really into the cutting edge stuff. I didn't get into Led Zeppelin. I didn't get into REM. I didn't get into U2 till late. All my stuff was the mainstream rock stuff, the long hair, dated stuff. Van Halen was a favorite of mine. Rush was a favorite of mine. And then it wasn't until late high school that I got turned on to what now is, I consider, the quality stuff. The Cures, the U2s, the Smashing Pumpkins as they got popular in the late 80s, early 90s.
What are you looking for from a band or an artist in terms of creativity?
There are specific things that I'm looking for, definitely. And I could probably make a list of, you got to have these things. But I take all that and throw it out on my first impression. All I'm looking for is an emotional response from me. Do I feel something when I hear your music, when I see you play live? That's what I'm looking for, because I feel there should be no difference between myself as a record executive and the person on the street who's going to go buy the record tomorrow. That's what I have to do to keep myself good. I have to stay in the same mental state and emotional state as the general public does. I can't lose the experience of going into a record store, browsing through, discovering something and paying my good money for it. Because the minute I do, I think I lose my edge of what everybody wants. Do I have my pulse on America? Absolutely not. I don't think anybody does. Who would have thought that Hootie and the Blowfish was going to sell as many records as they did? Okay? All I know is I figure if I like it, then I got to be able to find at least 1 million other people that do. And that's my job.
Is this the most creative job in terms of the various jobs within a record company?
Wow, that's a good question. I think everybody who does their job would tell you that their job is the most creative. I will tell you that this is the job that's on the closest front lines. This is when the recipe is just at the chefing stage, where everything's laid out on the table, and it's going to be up to you whether you add more salt and pepper, whether people like it that much.
Now, how far ahead do you have to be thinking in terms of what's going to be popular?
I don't use a calendar or any time frame, but I do know, for instance, I'm in the middle of making a record right now with an artist, a group called Agents of Good Roots. And Agents of Good Roots is a rock band that has jazz overtones, but they're all virtuoso players. The record we would have made 2 months ago is now so much different than the record we're making, because the band they just blossomed. Over about a month period, they put together a few shows and a few songs that took a sound that was, kind of predictable. And now I think they're going to be the future. So now we're going to make a record. It's August right now. We're going to make a record to come out next March or April. And what we're doing is putting in things that are going to make that record fresh. And what we're doing is we're using drum loops, we're using samples, we're rewriting songs, so that when that record comes out, not only is it fresh for March, but it's ahead of the game for March. Can we make a record that's going to redefine rock and roll? Absolutely not. I think records like Beck's only come along once in a while. But I do think we can make a record where people go, that's not what I would have expected from these guys.
What do you see as the next trends being in music?
Well, we all know that the electronica, the Chemical Brothers, the Prodigies are definitely, one side of the story. I think that the next trend is going to be, and I hope I'm right on this because I bank my future on it, it's going to be about artists. It's going to be about taking and wanting to know what that artist looks like, where they live, what they think, what they wear, and also what the lyrics mean, and why did they choose the album cover they choose. I think that we are going to invest so much more energy into believing in somebody or somebody's a group, as it was, as opposed to, I like that handsome band because I love that song, or I like that handsome band because they're cute. my belief is I like that band because this record moved me.
Recently in the music business, there have been so many bands that have one hit song and that's it. We call them one-hit wonders. What is it, do you think, that's producing those bands that have such a short musical life?
Well, I think our culture is changing. I think the labels have a lot to do with that. I think that what we're doing is we are so possessed by selling a lot of records so that we can make our corporate numbers, that when you have a hit record, not only do you hear the song on the radio, you see the video on MTV, you read about him in Rolling Stone, then you see him on the cover of this magazine and that magazine, and at the MTV Awards, and at the Grammys, and at the Academy Awards. And next thing you know, the mystique of what the artist is all about is completely gone. You get sick of the person before you get sick of the music. It used to be, I can't listen to that anymore. Now it's, I can't look at that person anymore.
So there needs to be a sort of a gap between the artist and the fan a little bit more?
There also has to, rock and roll has always been about mystery. There needs to be that whole, God, how do they do that? Rather than, oh, I can do that. What we've done is we've taken our artist and made them so common Joe, everyday person-like that there's no specialness to them anymore.
No magic, no mystery.
Yeah, it's like, it's the guy next door. Yeah, no big deal. So you can sit down and have a beer with the guy. I want to stand and look at the guy on stage in front of 20,000 people. I want to live my life. I want to fantasize that I could be that someday. I think it's a reaction, quite honestly, from what Nirvana started, which was totally needed, where they basically took all the hairspray and leather pants and blew it out of the water because the guy had on what he wore every day. And what happened was that made every band go, okay, no more style, no more makeup, no more good looks. I'm just going to look like I just woke up. And everybody got kind of tired of that. And now what we need is a little more larger than life, I think.
What is your opportunity to leave your own imprint on the music or your influence?
Ultimately, if I'm doing my job right, I don't need to leave my imprint. Because if I needed to leave my imprint, then I should just be the artist myself. Ultimately, what I need to do is remove my company's influence on the artist so that the pure music can come through to the buying public.
And that is your imprint?
That is my imprint, is to be basically removing all the barriers that a label puts in place because we're a corporation. Well, the album cover kind of needs to look like this, and we should use this guy for the video. If I'm signing the right artist, that artist knows what his album cover wants to look like because he knows what his fans want. He knows his audience a hell of a lot better than I do. Because he has to go out there every night and play in front of 10 people or 20,000 people. And after that show, those people come up and say, hey, why the hell were you on the cover of that magazine in an elephant outfit? He's the one that looks like the idiot, not RCA Records, not Bruce Flohr.
You're with a company here that has a long tradition, as we talked about, in the music business. Do you ever find yourself sort of fighting some of the corporate mentality or the corporate culture?
Yes. Trying to think where this is going to be broadcast. Yes. You fight, basically. I believe that every one of my artists is the second coming of Jesus Christ. So therefore, I want everything possible for my artists. Now, I'm not the only one signing artists here. And RCA has a roster of what we think are all great artists, okay? So sometimes I have to get in line. I have to wait my turn. I have to wait to get my artist that video or get him that money to go on tour. What I try to do is, in order to combat that, because a corporation has a tendency to move slowly and everybody has to feel comfortable, I basically set up plans long-term for my artists so that if the first single doesn't happen, I'm not over. I'm not out of the ballgame. I'm coming with the second single, and if that doesn't happen, I'm coming with a third single. And then after that, I got to be the guy to look myself in the mirror and say, okay, maybe we didn't get it right this time. Maybe we need to go back and try on another record. But ultimately, I try to buy my artists the time they need to write that song and that record.
Can you talk a bit about your early years, how you got into the business and where you grew up, things like that?
Well, I grew up in Southern California, and I came from a family of all basically civil servants. My father was an FBI agent. My mother was a school teacher. Brother was a fireman. Sister's a nurse. Other brother's a cop. I'm in the music business. I realized that I wanted to be in the music business when I was playing football and basketball, and quickly my talents digressed. So I figured I better find another avenue. And I always, listen to the radio and stuff. Initially, I wanted to be a disc jockey. So I went to school in San Luis Obispo, which is on the coast of California, in between San Francisco in Los Angeles. And I picked St. Louis because they had a really great college radio station, and I was going to go be Howard Stern.
A disc jockey.
A disc jockey, exactly. So I went up there, immediately went to the campus radio station, and got on as a late-night DJ. Worked my way into running the college radio station, where I was the one that determined what we played at that radio station. And it was just at the time, this is late 80s, it's about 86, 80, 87, just at the time that bands like REM and U2 were coming to the public's awareness through college radio. So the labels in America would go to these college stations and say, hey, play this. And we would all say, sure, it's all for free. We'll play whatever you want. Well, I was one of the guys going, sure, no problem. And as I played more and more records, the labels started saying, hey, either this kid's really stupid and plays our bad records, or he kind of knows what he's doing. We need to, keep him. They kept their eye on me. And at the time, I also became a disc jockey, and I was on the local pop radio station in the market. And so I was doing both, running the radio station, doing the disc jockey. And about 6 months before I got my degree, RCA came to me and said, how would you like to come work for us and call the college radio stations in America and promote them on our stuff? It was a great job for me because I was already on the receiving end of the phone, so I knew what college radio kids like to hear. So my concern was that I wasn't done with my degree yet, and my mom and dad really wanted me to get my degree. And I said, well, I haven't quite, I got 6 months to go. They said, well, tell you what, we'll hire you now, and then when you're done, come work for us. So my last 6 months, I was getting a full salary from this major record company. Going to college, I threw the best parties, I had the best wardrobe. I still couldn't get a date, but I had an amazing last 6 months of school. So much so that I almost flunked out and didn't get my degree, but I ended up being able to swindle my way out of it.
Wow.
It's amazing what free records will do for you.
So you went straight from there to the company?
I graduated on Saturday. Monday morning, I was at the office here at RCA Records, calling college radio stations. I did that job for about a year and a half. Then I started calling commercial radio stations. So I did promotion for the first 5 years of my career. Then I went from promotion to artist development, all within the same company, where I was getting the records on the radio and marketing them to out in the street. Then RCA said, come back to New York. So I said, great, come to New York. The minute I got there, I knew I hated it. I stayed there for exactly 365 days and said, I'm getting my butt back to California. Right about that time I came back to California, it was time for me to do something else. And I was going to leave RCA and go to another company. RCA offered me the opportunity to do A&R, which is a job that I never considered because I always felt that A&R was the most difficult part of the record industry because once you signed a band, you didn't have anything to do with it. You passed it off to somebody else. Well, fortunately, RCA allowed me to do A&R and artist development. So after I signed my bands, I also do their marketing. So I have a lot more contact with my act even after the record's made, which is essential. And it's the way it should be for every A&R person. I just happen to have that ability here at RCA, but quite honestly, if you're doing this job correctly, you should be able to do it with or without the title. And I've been doing A&R and artist development for the last 3.5 years.
How do you keep yourself in a creative mode of thinking?
I think I'm motivated by fear, actually, unfortunately. I think I'm concerned that there's somebody next door or across the street that wants my job, and they do. And I constantly question if I think I know it all, and I'm constantly looking for mentors out there. That's the hardest thing in this business. It's so competitive that it's hard to find someone who has more knowledge than you that's willing to share that knowledge. I've been very fortunate with colleagues that I work with, like Ron Fair and Brian Maloof. They've been teaching me the record-making side of it, what a studio is all about, how you can get the best sounds out of the studio. And that's really how I stay creative. I try to find people that I can just be a sponge off of. And I think it's ultimately my responsibility to then do the same thing to colleagues that I work for, that my assistants and the people that scout for me. I have to pass down some of my knowledge. I think that's really what the industry is lacking, is the farm league, if you will, of the next generation of executives.
There have been a lot of changes in the music business already in the past 20 years with video becoming so important. What changes do you see coming in the future that will change the music business again?
Well, I think the one change that we all know is around the corner is how people are going to buy records. I think that it's somehow the internet and fiber optics are going to play a role in getting you your music, which is going to be a major change because the distribution companies, which most of our labels are based upon, are going to be either have to be revamped or be obsolete. So the ultimate role for a record executive is, I really believe artists are always going to need people that can walk the line between commerce and art, because the artists can't afford to get wrapped up in the commerce of it because they lose what makes them special. And I think that artists are always going to need to surround themselves with creative people that can also play executive roles. I think that the other thing that's going to change is that music is becoming just one facet, a smaller and smaller facet of people's everyday lives, and we are going to have to continue to try to find ways to make our music mobile. We're also going to need to find another format of how to sell our music, because right now we're basically just selling them on CDs, where in the past the record industry has always been able to sell their music twice. Vinyl and 8-track, vinyl and cassette, cassette and CD. Now it's just CD.
I mean, the real fans will buy both.
Right,
Used to buy both.
They'll buy one for their car and they'll buy one for their home. We have to find something that, you know, is, whether it's the mini disc or some sort of technology, is going to have to reinvent the industry.
So you think that someday people will just download their music off of the internet, but won't people still want to, you know, hold an album or a CD or a lyric page? Will that change?
Well, the thought process is they're going to be able to print the graphics right off their computer.
A piece of paper, though.
Yeah. But the quality is going to be there where you can basically manufacture the disc in your house. And it's, you know, it's scary, but it is. People are making records in their house as it is. I mean, most of the demo tapes that you get these days is from two 15-year-old kids in Des Moines, Iowa with an 8-track and a drum machine. And they sound better than the stuff I'm paying $300,000 for. You know, it's scary.
You must get a lot of demo tapes in the mail.
Yeah,
hundreds of tapes,
I
or
would say probably on average there's 60 to 75 tapes or CDs a week, and I would say there's probably 50 to maybe 50 to 60 phone calls from people wanting to know if I got their tape, and then if I did get their tape, if I listened to it, and if I listened to it, did I like it? And if I liked it, are you going to come see me play? And why haven't you signed me? And Jesus, how busy can you possibly be? There's no way to be popular in this job, because you're saying no 99.9% of the time, and I hate saying no.
what do you see as your goal with the company here and your work? What do you see happening in the years ahead?
I have specific goals in mind. And I think I can feel comfortable saying it because, you know, I've let my superiors know what my ultimate vision is. I think ultimately I want to try to become a well-rounded executive where I know promotion, I know marketing, I know A&R, and therefore I can possibly oversee a large part of the company. The trick is going to be, the higher up you get, the more removed you get from the music. And that's what I'm struggling with right now. I'm 31 years old, and I'm struggling with that. Do I want to take that corporate leap and be in meetings all day and do dinners all night and then maybe catch a band? Whereas right now, I'm in meetings all day and dinners all night, but it's with an artist, and I'm talking about music, and then I'm going to a show and I'm hanging backstage. It's the fun side of the record business, and I don't know if I ever want to give that up, and I don't know if I necessarily should have to. But I think, you know, going back to your original question, I think at some point I'd like the chance to get a group of people together and try to move them all in one direction towards breaking records.
Now, we understand you've had a new addition in your life. Can you talk about that?
My biggest signing to date. 5 weeks ago, I had Maxwell Michael Flohr, 8 pounds 4 ounces, 21 inches long, and thank God he does not look like me. My wife and I had our first child, and it's been a really great experience. It was funny. My biggest concern was, you know, as we talked about starting a family, is how's that going to affect my job? You know, how can I possibly be? I travel 2 weeks out of the month, and I'm in clubs all the time. And fortunately, I have a very supportive wife who, you know, from the get-go has understood that, you know, it's going to take the two of us to get through this. And the minute we had the baby, it's just like everything just slowed down just a little bit. I tell you, I've never been more effective with my time since the baby's arrived, because my whole thing is I want to get my stuff done and get home and hold him. And he's great. He's got his crib there, and right next to his crib, he's got his first electric guitar. Just waiting for him to get up there so I can make my millions off of him.
Now, will he be getting involved in music, do you think?
I think he's going to have that option. He's got two choices. He can be a rock star or a professional athlete. That's it.
Thanks for joining us today.
Pleasure talking to you.
Thanks.